Hello and welcome to the second of our workshop of our SEO series that is kindly provided to us by Beth Browning. I am your host, Sharon Uraimi, founder and president of Captive Touch, and Open Social Media Initiative. Just to remind you and introduce you to our speaker, I'm going to give you a few words about her bio. Beth Browning has been focused on optimizing websites for customer experience, search engine marketing, and increasing conversion for more than a decade. She recently joined the Search Engine Academy team as a master level instructor and operates the Pennsylvania Search Engine Academy, offering training in Pennsylvania. So if you listen to her first presentation, and also in addition to this bio, you probably realize that Beth has a lot of experience in search engine optimization, and she's also a fantastic teacher, judging by her first presentation. So I'm going to change the view to Beth, and you have the floor. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. Thanks for everybody for your support on the last Hangout. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to this one as well. So without further ado, I am going to go ahead and, Sherry, did you turn the screen over to me?
Yes.
I can share my screen?
Screen share, yes.
Okay. Okay. That's not what I want.
I think it needs to be open in the background. That's it.
Okay. Alrighty. So last time we talked about how search engines find content, and so a natural follow-on to that is to talk about how to create searchable content. I think Sherry put out a message that said, you know, what good is there in writing content if nobody can find it? And that's certainly true. So we're going to talk first about what is content. And really content, most of the time when we think about content or we talk about it, we're really talking about text and writing content. But there are multiple forms of content that are used on the web. It's really any type of information from text, media, images, podcasts, Flash. Any of that is considered content. Some content is more search engine friendly than other types of content. So the way I think about it is search engines can only read text. So they don't see images, they can't listen to podcasts, and they can't watch movies. The goal is really to create search engine friendly content, and there are ways to make some types of unindexable or non-search engine friendly content more search engine friendly, and I'll touch a bit on that. However, for today's presentation, we're going to be focusing on written content. So why create content? First and foremost, the goal is to provide visitors with valuable information that's going to help them understand how your product or service can help them. You don't want to write content for the search engines. People buy from you, people do business with you, search engines don't. So if you do a great job of writing for search engines so that search engines find you, but it's not valuable to your visitors, you've really wasted your time. And what you really want to do is give both people and search engines a reason to come back time and time again. So let's start with the basics about what is a keyword and why it's important. Keyword is a term that's thrown out a lot, so I just want to make sure that everybody has the same definition. It's really the word or terms that a person enters into the search box when they're looking for something on the internet or on a website. And using the right keywords in your content helps Google understand what your website is all about. And strategically incorporating keywords increases the likelihood that your page will gain a good position in the search engine results. So it's not just about using the keywords randomly in your content. There are ways that you can really use it strategically and make it even more effective. So before we go into tips for writing content, I'll just give you a few tips for finding keywords. And there are links on here. Anywhere there's a hyperlink, I've linked it out to either, in many cases, an article I wrote in shameless self-promotion, but in other cases it's to just regular other resources that you would hopefully find valuable. Um, so some tips for finding keywords are you want to start with a few obvious seed words based on what your website and business is about. You kind of know what people would be searching for. If you run a hair salon, they might be searching on, haircuts. I don't know. One thing that I do always like to mention is that before you think you have the right keyword, make sure you do a little bit of double checking as kind of validate that it is the kind of results that you might be thinking you're going to get or what you're going to get. So an example of that might be, let's say you sell notebooks, and internally, I'm making this up of course, but internally you refer to them as tablets. Well, if you were to go to Google and do a search on tablet, you would not get notebooks. You would get iPads and other types of notebook tablets. So that would not be a good word for you to use, and you'd want to look elsewhere. So the next thing that you can also do is to review your website statistics to see what keyword phrases were used by people who found your site. This can be insightful in a couple of different ways. One is it will let you know and validate if people are finding you for what you think you want to be found for. And in some cases, you might be surprised and you might be people might be navigating to your website for things that you really don't even sell. And I've seen this happen where somebody wrote a really interesting blog post, but it actually had nothing to do with their website. It drove a whole bunch of traffic on Motorola flip phones, but they don't sell Motorola flip phones, so it was really not good traffic. So it can be insightful, both what you're doing right and what you might need to improve on. You really want to just get started with 5 to 6 keyword phrases. Don't obsess about looking for the perfect keyword. Search engine optimization is an ongoing refining process. And you can use tools like Google Trends, AdWords, or Word Tracker to discover search volume for your keywords using those two tools. So let's start talking about some tips for writing content. You want to, again, focus on your potential buyers. Wherever it makes sense, you want to have a call to action, a buy now, a call now. Make sure that you give them a reason, give them something to do to engage with you. Write easy to use text. Stay away from internal or industry speak. Keep it simple. Don't try and use big words to impress someone, and keep graphics to a minimum. My general rule of thumb is to use words that are 2 syllables or less. It doesn't, if you to come up with a 3-syllable, 4-syllable word doesn't make it any easier to read. So I try to kind of stick to that general rule. Some other tips are work with bulleted or numbered lists, and that is important for a couple of reasons. One, you want to make, especially when you're writing content for the web, you want to make sure that it's easy to scan. So you want to use short paragraphs, bullet points, numbered lists. The other reason that bulleted lists and numbered lists are good for an SEO perspective is because that tells Google that that's an important chunk of content. Now, having said that, you really kind of want that list to be able to stand on its own and communicate an idea independent of the title or intro. So you don't want to use something like using our services will help you in bullet points get better, do more, live longer. Those 3 bullet points wouldn't stand on their own as an independent idea. You want to keep adding new pages and make sure your pages have enough content to be optimized. 300 words is the minimum. I would say 1,000 is probably the maximum. Sweet spot's usually around 600 to 700. It's long enough that it can be optimized, but short enough that people will stick with you and read it. And keep adding content on a regular basis, at least weekly. A nice tip I like to advise people to do is to read it out loud before you publish it. There's something about hearing it. You can kind of find where you might have phrased something a little bit difficult to read. Next to customer focus, it's important to connect with a dialogue that will elicit an emotional response. You want to make people want to read, be able to relate to the content. You're really telling stories. So you want to find a way to open it that relates the dilemma and the solution in a way that compels the visitor to keep reading. So if this is the dilemma, then here is an emotionally compelling solution. So This, to me, is huge. And this is one of the things that most of the time when I hear people talk about writing content, they focus on talking about the keywords. What's really, really important is the behavior. People are, when they come to the web and they are searching for something, they type something into Google, they're searching with intent. They're searching for a reason. And so you want to think about their behavior and what is bringing them there and why they're coming, not just the keywords. So some ways you can do that are you talk to customers and talk to people, key into the questions that they're asking. How would you search for, whatever your product or service is? You can use keyword tools then to evaluate the phrases and get additional ideas. You can look for trends in LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Research and use related topics. For example, if you sell lawnmowers, those people also need gas, oil, and other lawn care products. If your business is local, include zip codes, city names, landmarks, that type of thing. Also, I mentioned this last week, I think, but you can use Google's Autosuggest as a source for additional ideas. It's if you search on something and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, what is coming up, or actually this is at the search box, I apologize. When you see it auto-suggesting different terms as you're typing in, that can give you some ideas as well as the related results, which is what's at the bottom of the search engine result page. Keywords in context. This goes right along with behavior. Like I said, when someone goes to Google, there is most likely something going on in their life that they need to find a solution for. They're searching with intent. And it can be, it's not a major life-ending problem, or sometimes it's just I need to find a birthday present or something like that. So here's an example. If someone types soy candles into the search box, and I used this in last week's presentation, so we're just going to move forward with it. Do they mean they want to buy a soy candle, learn how to make one, learn how they're made, or what the benefits are? Now, if you sell soy candles and you're wanting to put content around one of these concepts, there are a couple of ways you can implement that into your SEO strategy. You can either, one, cleverly find a way to include the phrase, how to make soy candles, in your current content about soy candles, which may be just product detail pages that you're selling candles from. Or you could create a new page and provide valuable information, including videos and step-by-step instructions, of course in a numbered list, and have a link to your product page, or better, your product category of soy candles. So if remember, the formula is keywords plus content, and that is the context then within which they are. Good keywords, wrong context, low theme, low relevance. Good keywords, right context, right theme, high relevance. So if we apply that relevancy formula to our soy candle example, how to make a soy candle plus a product landing page, buy me, so that how to make a soy candle is cleverly inserted within that buy me page, is the wrong theme and low relevance. How to make a soy candle plus a landing page all about how to make soy candles is the right theme and that is therefore high relevance. That's a really important formula to keep in mind when you're optimizing your site for search engines. Both real people and Google reward web pages that have high relevance. You could almost replace the word relevance with trust in my mind. And that's really what you're building. You're building trust with your visitors, and you're also building trust with the search engine. It's all about credibility. And I'll back up just 1 minute as far as why I said link to a category page rather than a product page. If that product goes out of stock or you no longer sell it, you're going to have to remember to go back in and update that one link. If you go to a more evergreen page, then you can keep that relevant link going to a place on your site that is, that's selling product, and that's fine. But just make it sure that it's easy for you to keep up with, and that you don't end up with broken links on your pages. Okay, so now let's talk about where to use the keywords. When search engines crawl the pages of a website, they take into consideration a lot of the various elements. The first one is title. That is the most important element of a page, and it's also the text, that link that is displayed in the search engine results. So if you notice on the examples below, SEO training dates, come to one of our SEO training classes in blue, that is the link, that's the page title. The metadata description is descriptive information that tells the search engine what the page is about. It's not part of the content that displays on the page, so in other words, people can't read it when they come to the page, but search engines read it when they crawl the page, and if it's well written, and if it's highly relevant to the content of the page, and if it's relevant to the keyword that was searched on, Google will display that description under the title. So where you see I've got that highlighted in yellow underneath the title, those are the meta descriptions. So you can almost think of the combination of title and metadata as ad copy. You can make it a very compelling reason and increase your click-through rates by doing a great job of incorporating your keywords and giving a message to the prospective visitors by properly using your title and your metadata. So that's a really great tip. One thing I will mention is that it's not a guarantee. And if I've seen it happen both with page titles and with meta descriptions, if the search term doesn't quite match what Google thinks, if the content on your page doesn't quite match what the searcher is searching on, Google will pick out a snippet of text from your page and will fill in the content there. So that's where when you look at search engine results pages and you see that, that's where that's coming from. One other quick note on this is that you'll notice where terms are bolded, like SEO, classes, that's because those are the keywords that match. And so the keywords will be bolded by the search engine, and it just draws more emphasis to it and kind of highlights the fact that this is a relevant result. Okay, so the other places that you want to use keywords are pictures and videos, which are the visual elements of the page. I could do a whole session on how to optimize pictures and videos. I've included links that give some examples on how to do that. But one thing you do want to do is be sure to wrap content around your images. If you have content around the images, it can give it more value than if it's just a standalone image. You can also optimize the picture captions and labels, which are the text that describe an image, but it's not part of an image. Links, which are the clickable texts or images that connect pages. And then, of course, in your body content, and then also in the URL. Let's get creative. This is where I think it starts getting fun. Getting creative about content for people and SEO. So you want to think about how people use your products or services. Can they solve multiple problems? So I did a little experiment. It was kind of off the wall a little bit, but it was fun. So I wrote a post, and I did an experiment while I was writing the post about the fact that you could be shopping for men's slippers because you were buying a gift, or because you were the costume person for the local community playhouse. And when you search, and we talked about this in the last presentation, so as you search, Google starts taking your terms and kind of combining them, trying to figure out what's going on in your head. So over the course of over the course of my several searches, I ended up with results related just to men's slippers and results with men's slippers and costumes, which was highly an interesting experience. So if that were the case, I could then write content about how you could use my men's slippers for your community play, or how you could use my men's slippers as a gift. So I know that's a little bit of a crazy example, but it just kind of, I think sometimes extreme examples help to highlight the point more. And the other thing that you want to think about are the phases of a purchase cycle. These are the 4 phases of a purchase cycle or problem identification. So I'm trying to diagnose my problem. I'm going to do some research and gather information. Then I'm going to compare alternatives. Then I'm going to make a purchase. And then there's post-purchase. So if you think about that, that's a whole lot of content you can write about virtually every product or service you have. because people are in different phases of the type of information they need based on where they're at in this purchase cycle. Here are just some ideas for other ideas for content: top 10 lists, interviews, product reviews, tutorials, tips or strategies, how-to, articles that offer solutions, articles that educate, articles about industry changes, and common misconceptions. One of my personal favorites, and this works if it's something that is relevant to your industry, of course, but one of my personal favorites is whenever I'm learning something new, I write about it, because for me that does two things. It kind of sometimes forces me to learn something that I might otherwise put on the back burner, and it shares information. If I'm learning it, I figure other people are probably interested in learning it as well, and it really solidifies that concept in my head. So that's one way that I kind of like to come up with new ideas for content. So in a nutshell, how to create searchable content: know your audience, find the right keywords, be relevant. I can't stress be relevant enough. If you might not feel that your product or service is particularly sexy or interesting, but write about it and how it can help people solve problems. It's not going to do you any good to write about really interesting hot topics that aren't going to help you sell your service or product. Be persuasive, be customer focused, incorporate your keywords strategically, and promote and distribute your content. Just a slide to recap some of my services. I do website analysis and competitive intelligence. I teach. I conduct hands-on workshops of all levels, and I do both on-site training and virtual training, as well as the workshops. Search engine market, mentoring, content creation. So I'd love to come see you at one of my workshops, and if nothing else, I will join me on Google+. And thank you so much, Sherry, for inviting me to share information again. And I will turn back to you.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. And can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. All right. I have some questions for you. So
yes.
Okay. So you mentioned that which was good advice, to make bulleted content. And you said that the bulleted content has to stand on its own. And you gave an example that wasn't a good idea. Can you give me an example of a good bulleted content that stands on its own?
Let's see, off the top of my head. Okay, so if you were going to give a list on some things, reasons to do search engine optimization. So 3 reasons to do search engine optimization. And my bulleted list would be increase conversion, and then I would give a little reason, or increase traffic to my website. And then I would give a little bit of additional information, and actually increase traffic could probably stand on its own, but I always like to give a little explanation first. Improve search engine visibility. And so when I read that, I know what it is. Increase conversion, that says something to me, whereas just grow with me doesn't mean anything. I don't know if that's a very good example.
So when somebody lands on the article and say, here's a list of reasons that you should use search engine optimization, that every bulleted point has to have its own explanation. Is that what you're saying?
No, just at least it's a thought that makes sense. So the example, when I was writing the post, the example that I was looking at was actually a moving company. And they didn't, it was just a list of things that I wish I could find it. I looked for it and their website was down, so I couldn't find the, let me look real quick here. And I can give you, but you really wanted a good example, so let me.
So because it's.
I know I'm looking away from my screen.
In terms of, that's okay, in terms of readability, it's so important to write bulleted posts, but bulleted points, but that's one part of bulleted post that I didn't consider, thinking that it should be standing on its own. Because I do use bulleted points quite a lot.
It should be, yeah, I mean, it should be able to, you should be able to read the list and not, here, maybe this is a better way to phrase it. You should be able to read the bulleted list and have at least an idea of what it's about and that they're tied together without necessarily having to read the title or the lead-in paragraph. I think it's most important to do it that way if you're using a lead-in paragraph. So sometimes, there might be a sentence and then just a colon rather than, a title for those bulleted lists. So if that's the case, then, you just want to make sure that somebody can scan that list and have an idea of what you're talking about. They're not just kind of random thoughts in a bullet list.
I see.
Does that help?
Yes, that helps a lot. And then another question I have is that you talked about trends in order to decide what to write about. Mm-hmm. So how would you look for trends? Did you say Google Trends, or where would you go to look for trends?
So where I look for trends are what are people, like on Twitter. So if you set up your lists and you look at what are people talking about, what kind of questions are people asking, monitoring and looking at what's going on in communities, what's the hot topics. Those are good places to, so I think social media is probably one of the best places to discover trends. Another place that you can look at trends is Google Trends, and that's what's hot and trending, although that's not always relevant to, may or may not be relevant to your industry, what's really big. But you can do you can look in your social networks and see what people are talking about, and then you can go to Google Trends or one of the other keyword tools and see kind of how much volume is that. How, is that just one little blip of noise that you got in the midst of, or is it really a bigger topic that's worth talking about?
Oh, I see. So something that lots of people are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so pardon me?
I was going to say, people that are within, that are your target audience are talking about. Because if they're not your target audience, then, if they're talking about Justin Bieber, but you don't have anything to do with Justin Bieber, you don't want to write about him.
Yeah, that's right. So you can imagine that with all bloggers out there, probably they're using a similar strategy. So they look through their social media accounts or Google Trends or something, and then they find the subject that most people in their target audience are talking about. Mm-hmm. And I sort of want to be devil's advocate here and say, so if everybody's doing it, then everybody is going to start writing about it. So as a blogger, I feel that you should always find a place where you should be unique. Such that you are not riding the bandwagon, such that you're not creating noise, because after a while it becomes noise. Because especially in my field, there's so many people writing about social media. I was doing a search on this, the fact that LinkedIn bought Pulse, and I wanted to learn a little bit about Pulse. But when I searched Google, it was all about like hundreds of articles.
Yeah.
Talking about the fact that LinkedIn has bought Pulse.
I agree with you 100%.
So and what strategies do you suggest to both look at the trends and also be a little different?
So I usually use the combination. If it's something like, because search engine optimization is the same way. There's tons and tons of people writing about it. And so there are times where I do ride the wave a little bit, and this is what a lot of people are talking about, and I do that when I think I can bring a unique perspective to it. And the other thing that I think about anyway is that not everybody is following the big bloggers and all that kind of stuff. So as you build your own audience, and if that information is important to your audience, then I think it's still worth writing about. Okay. But I kind of tend to differentiate myself a little bit by also, there aren't a lot of search engine optimization people that write about social media. And so I try and incorporate some social media stuff. Even though there's tons of people in social media writing about it, I differentiate myself a little bit that way. And I tend to write probably more for the non-expert, the people that are learning it. And that's also a little bit of a difference. So part of it is coming up with an angle. Part of it is deciding whether or not that hot topic like Pulse is really going to be relevant to all of your audience, or if that's just good information for you to know, even though everybody else is writing about it.
So you have to.
And I'm learning all this, so I may give you a different answer a year from now.
So it's yeah. So it basically you have to find that unique angle, which is going to become more and more challenging. Yeah. So
I mean, if you think about how many people there are that are reading blogs and how many people are writing blogs, I mean, there are tons of, you know, quote unquote eyeballs to go around, and you know, people start building relationships, and it really depends on what your goal is with the blog. For me, my goal with my blog is really to share information that will hopefully bring people to my workshops. It will demonstrate that if I meet somebody and I send them to my blog, they can see the content that I've written, and they can see that I have a knowledge in what I'm talking about. So mine isn't so much about wanting to build a huge readership, which is another aspect to think about. It is really, what is the goal of your blog or your content?
Okay. But those that rely on people going on a search engine and searching for something, it's sort of, so they would depend on that search engine. And again, like we said, it's becoming more and more problematic, competitive. And I think we're becoming more and more, I think we're realizing in this field, for anybody who is paying attention, is that building those small groups of people that really care about what you say, what you have to say, that's also a big component of it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
But it is important to write such a way that search engines find you. Otherwise
you're hopelessly lost.
Yeah, exactly.
And one other thing that I didn't mention, but Google authorship, which is probably a topic for another another session, but Google authorship is going to be incredibly important. Yeah. If you want, as an author and as a contributor to the World Wide Web of content, if you want to be found by Google and by those people that are in your communities, especially the Google communities, Google authorship is essential. So everybody really needs to look into that.
Yeah, because it personalizes the search and puts a face onto the content.
Well, and it does more than that. It actually also helps with search engine optimization. If I'm in one of your circles and you search on something that I write about, and there's a whole bunch of other factors that go into play too, but I am more likely to come up in your search results if you're signed into Google, if I've verified my Google authorship and I'm in your circle.
Okay. All right. Now, what is the difference between, when you say page title, because you showed title and page title and description, the page title, is it the title of the blog post, or is it the URL? Which one is it?
It's not the URL. Typically it's the title of the blog post. However, there are SEO plugins that you can use that allow you to override the title of the blog post that you enter in, like into WordPress or Blogger, I imagine. I'm not as familiar with Blogger, but there are tools that you can use that actually allow you to create an SEO title that overrides the blog post title. So that
would be like Yoast, because I use Yoast's plugin, and it does. And when you scroll down, you create a meta description and an SEO title. So that's the one we're talking about. Right.
If you're not using that, then it's going to default to the title that you if you're not using something like Yoast or SEO all-in-one, then it's going to default to the title that you entered for your post.
I see.
That will be the title. So basically, Yoast is overriding that.
I see. It's a fantastic plugin. Okay, so another question. Are the SEO, the elements of a landing page in terms of SEO different than the elements of a regular website?
Yep.
No? Okay. So the same principles apply.
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. Wow. That's awesome. Thank you very much, Beth. This was fantastic. And I'm looking forward to next week having you over and telling us more about search engine optimization.